it's above 90.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, but if you're stood right next to my face...
Sound limiters. Glasgow. That was a terrible school.
Hello guys, and welcome back to Beats and Best Friends, episode 3.
Oh, that was cool.
Jinx, make a wish.
Jinx. No, it's Jinx. Now you have to buy me a Coke, isn't it, from the office? When Pam does it.
Really?
She's like, Jinx, got to buy me a Coke. Office fans write in and tell me that I'm right.
She does.
I'm right. So, yeah, episode 3. How are you feeling today?
Really good, mate. We've just finished teaching, so you've had a day of teaching, doing...
Mega long day for me.
Yeah, you've had a long day. Very long day. We were teaching rhythm section workshop, which is really cool.
Had some really good fun with that, actually. Got to play some very cool stuff. They had some really good creative ideas today, which was like really impressive, actually. Yeah. Loads of fun, that one.
Year one's representing.
Yeah, year one's representing, absolutely. And what did you do other than that today? You were coming in today because it's Monday, isn't it? So.
Yeah, so I've literally just got back off the tour, so it's kind of
lovely.
Like, I don't know, I don't really know where I am at the moment. I'm like here, then I'm there, then I'm teaching, then I'm back on the tour. But it's all good.
What was the tour last week? Or where are you in the country?
So we were Glasgow.
That was a terrible Scottish accent. Glasgow? That's even worse. I give up.
Just stop.
I'll try to do a better one this time.
Okay. And Liverpool.
Well, Liverpool? There you go. That's
better.
There you go. Thank you.
Yeah, all our Liverpool fans out there.
Yeah,
sorry.
I thought it was pretty good. Lovely. So Glasgow and Liverpool. And it was quite a special one, wasn't it? Why was it special?
Yeah. So Holly Johnson, who I'm on tour with at the moment, is from Liverpool. He's a Scouser.
Lovely.
So it was at the Liverpool Philharmonic. Nice. And it was sold out, and it was probably the best gig I've ever done.
Nice.
Like the O2 was really special, but there was something about this one. It was just like electric, and also Liverpool had just won the football as well. So it was just like good vibes all round.
Nice.
It was just ridiculous, to be honest. It was just, they were so up for it. The energy was electric, and the band just played their arse off as well. It was good.
Right. Nice. Good. And what's the capacity of that one?
I think it's like 2,000 or 3,000.
Nice. So he did 2 dates, didn't he?
We've got a second date.
Oh, you've got a second date. You're going
10th
back
of
on
November.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Be interesting to see what it's like the second time round when not the novelty, but like you know what you're expecting now.
Yeah.
So that'd be quite cool. And how was the rest of the week?
Yeah, amazing. Really, really good. So this week we've got Birmingham and then London Palladium on Friday.
Yeah, London's the big date on Friday, isn't it?
Yeah,
nice.
Which is going to be amazing.
Nice.
I'm a bit nervous for that one.
Really? Because you've got so many people who you know.
All my family, Claire, mum and dad, brother. There's a lot of we've just seen online that people are flying in from the States to come and see it and stuff. It's sold out. It's going to be amazing. But I'm like, I don't know. That one makes me a little bit nervous.
And because you were saying about the staging and stuff, is that the same for London, or is it because there's screens or something you were saying?
Yeah. So we, on this run of the tour, the UK dates, and I think when we go to Germany as well, they've actually brought in a visuals guy, a guy called Miguel, who's amazing.
Yeah.
And because the whole show is to click and to track, he's matched the visuals to the whole show.
Oh, cool.
So all the visuals on this massive screen that we tour behind us matches up to hits, the songs that we're playing,
nice,
all the intros and stuff, and the visuals are ridiculous.
Yeah,
so cool. When we first come on, it's like Holly's face comes up and then it kind of fades away into the distance.
Yeah,
and then there's all these shots of him live.
Nice.
Things that pop on the screen with hits and stuff like that, and then this massive strobe towards the end, and then we kick into the show and Holly walks on. That's pretty
cool.
special. That's
really cool. I saw one of the videos, and I think it was in Relax. Is it orange and stuff?
Yeah.
And there's someone. That's not Holly dancing on the screen, is it? Or is it?
No,
it's just an actor or something.
Loads of naked dudes.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I was like, oh, naked dudes.
Yeah,
cool. Great. That's awesome, man. Very nice. And then next week, what's that after that? So that's.
So next week, I've actually taken the week off.
Great.
Because we're on reading week.
Yeah.
It's half term. And then the next weekend, we fly off to Germany.
Nice. And that's the end.
No.
2 more weeks.
No. So we've got Germany. Then we come back and do a load of UK shows. It's like Newcastle, Liverpool,
that's it. Yeah.
Brighton, a couple of other ones. And then we go off and do all the island stuff.
And that's it.
And then we're done.
Nice. Yeah, I can't really, because it's nearly end of October, which is like, it's gone by so quick since we came back. Nice. Very, very cool. Very, very cool.
What's been happening with you? What have you been up to?
So since I saw you last week, what's been happening with me? Not a huge amount. Not a huge amount. I've got this theatre show in 2 weeks' time, which is like a Frankie Valli thing.
Which is
quite fun.
Amazing.
Just one night, just depping in. But it's still like 33 songs, so you got like a full. It's a full show. So I've just been learning the tracks for that, and again, it's just great music. Frankie Valli stuff, like it's just some of the best songs of all time, really. I forget how many hits they had. So many hits. I've gone through the set list and I was like, I didn't know it was Frankie Valli. So that was really cool.
How'd you get that?
That is through another gig. Just the keyboard player was like, oh, I need a depth for this. Do you want to do it? And I was like, yeah, for sure. Love to do that.
I think that's so. I get asked this question all the time. I think it's the million dollar question, isn't it? And like for any sort of people that are looking to get into the industry or students or whatever, when they go like, how do you get work? It's quite a tricky question because it's like there's so many different ways. But I think the most common is it's like word of mouth, isn't it? It's like repeat business. Yeah. So if you do well on one gig, you might get recommended for another one by someone, or they're like, oh, actually, you did well on that gig. I need a bass player or a drummer or a guitarist or whatever for this gig.
Absolutely. Yeah, totally. And what it was is we were chatting on the gig and the guy was saying, oh, I've got this gig coming up. And he asked the drummer, he was like, oh, can you do it? And he was like, yeah, I can do that. And he's like, oh, I actually need a bass player as well. So could you do it? And then, you fix the gig there and then, and it's done. It's a funny one because it's a small band. It's all to click. And some of the stuff is on track. So when I got the material, I got the click tracks, which obviously is like, fine, but not the most exciting thing to play when you've just got sheet music and a click track with some very sparse backing occasionally in the track. So I said to him, I was like, oh, can I get some like the tracks? Because like it's really interesting when you have a chart and the click track, sometimes it just doesn't do it enough justice until you hear what the band are playing on the songs themselves. Yeah. So like, because it's theatre, so many of them like time signature changes and feel changes. And now I've learnt the songs, I'm just going back to the click track. So I'm just doing it to the click track. But there is something really weird about just playing bass on your own with a click track, no backing at all. But it's good because then you get used to the cues and that's been really useful.
So have you got like cues on the backing tracks? Yeah. That's always nice.
Yeah, because some of them are horrible.
Well. Yeah,
it's like 14 repeats, and you're like, what?
Yeah, that's nice.
So it's like 1, cool, 2. You're like, okay, great.
Nice.
Because after a while, I'd be snowblind by like 12. So that was cool. So that's it's 2 weeks time, which is really fun. I'm actually just really looking forward to it. It's just fun music, great bass lines as well, really good fun. And
where's the gig?
It's at Dunstable Theatre.
I played
which
there.
Is beautiful, right?
Yeah,
it's supposed to be a really nice theatre. So I'm looking forward to that. And yeah, that's been it really. Just been doing that and just family stuff.
Nice.
What did we do this weekend? Just chilled. I had open day. That was fun. So we had an open day on Saturday. Nice. New house band. Did an amazing job. Amazing shout out to you guys if you're watching this. So it's Natalia and Amar on vocals.
Cool.
Tay is still MD, and you'd remember Tay from season 1 with Beth, who when we did one of our student guest spots. Lucas, a new guitarist transfer from Sir HE.
Yeah.
Chris Heather on drums.
Nice.
And that's it. That's the band. So they were brilliant. It was so good, like so good. So I was really proud of them on Saturday. Had a really big full house. There was about 50 in for that, which was really cool. And what was really cool, actually, so I do this thing where I ask them what makes a great performance, and I do it on Mentimeter. And then I ask them, what would you most like to work on if you come to ICMP? So we do that. And then, so we look at themes, and one thing that kept coming up was technique. Everyone was just like, technique. So I said, right, who'd be up for doing it right now? Who wants to get up on stage? This is at the venue as well, mind you, with all the lights and everything. And 2 girls put their hands up, and a bassist, a guy called L, really, really lovely guy, actually. And the girls were brilliant as well. So we got them straight up, got them playing. Then
Amazing.
Natalia and Amar gave them some vocal feedback. I gave Elle with Tay some bass feedback.
Wow.
And then they played it again. And it was amazing. And like they left feeling really buzzed by that. So that was really, really cool. So hopefully we'll see some of those people in September. But it was really good.
Mate, nice.
So yeah, so that was it.
I think that can when we were in Liverpool afterwards, because me and Dave just like to go out and have a beer and stuff.
Yeah, of course.
After the show, we come off stage, we go back, we grab a beer or grab a glass of wine, and then we actually go back out onto the stage, and people sort of clearing the theatre or the venue we're in, and we just go and speak to them.
Yeah.
And it's just really nice, isn't it? You know, because sometimes they want to speak to you and stuff. And I spoke to a really lovely lady called Catherine.
Right.
After the show, and she was like, "Oh, my son's just started to play drums and stuff," and I was like, "Do you want some sticks?"
Nice.
And she was like, "Oh my god, of course." I was like, "It's cool. Like, I've got some sticks." So I gave her some sticks. Yeah, 50 quid.
And you signed them.
Yeah, I signed them in hundreds. No, I gave her some sticks, and I got her phone. I sort of took a picture of my kit from behind it and like in front of stuff, so he could see.
Yeah.
And she was like, "Oh my god, it's amazing," and stuff. And it made me think of, there was a gig that I went to when I was super young, and the drummer was amazing. And I went and spoke to him, and he was a really, really lovely dude. I can't remember his name actually, but he was in this metal band, and he was like super cool.
Nice.
And he like proper inspired me. He gave me some sticks, and it just made me think back to that kind of that feeling. I was like, I want to be like that dude.
Yeah.
And you know, hopefully I might be. You know,
Yeah.
if he plays drums, you might remember that. You know, he might not.
Definitely.
And it was just like, I think with the thing that you were talking about as well, it's just nice to, those little moments, you know, sometimes remain in someone's head and give them the kind of inspiration and the encouragement, I suppose, to go off and do it themselves. And I said to Catherine as well, I was like, "You're amazing, you know, supporting your son, because there's no way that I'd be here now doing what I'm doing, meeting the people that I meet, traveling the world, if it wasn't for my mum and dad, because they drove me to all my gigs. They were constantly sort of supporting me, you know, sort of took me to rehearsals and all that stuff. And just, you know, when you've got someone backing you, it just makes it that much easier.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So
Definitely.
Yeah, it's important.
No, I totally agree. And I think like there's a duty of sending it down for the next people. And like, you know, I think that's wonderful. That's so well. Catherine, shout out to you.
Yeah.
And
Sweet Catherine.
Sweet Catherine.
She was lovely.
And her son.
Yeah.
Right. So today, this episode, we are going to be talking about something that is horrible, the bane of our lives, and that is sound limiters. Now, some of you may know what a sound limiter is. For those of you who don't, what is a sound limiter, Dr. Jon?
Dr. Jon. So there's quite a few different types of sound limiter. And it seems to be a thing now in the UK because everyone wants to stop having fun and stop all fun, and health and safety love to fucking put their dirty hands in everywhere.
Yeah, totally.
But essentially what it is, all venues are different, but you're in a venue, they have some form of decibel reader, and whether that's like a handheld thing or it might be a mic at the back of the venue plugged into a decibel reader. And if you go into a certain level of volume or decibels, in some venues it will literally, you're plugged into their power supply, it will cut the power. And what it basically means is it's giving you a warning that you're too loud.
Yeah.
Now, the thing is, when I say there's so many different versions, we've had it in venues where you've got, Bob down the road, an old guy who's made a complaint, and the council have come in and put in a sound limiter. And that might be the owner of the venue just at the back of the venue with a decibel reader, and they're walking around being super distracting all night with a reader going, "You're too loud, you're too loud." And the reason it pisses me off so much, and this is a bit of a ranty episode because we thought we'd get it off our chest. And I know that if you're a gigging musician, especially doing functions and weddings and stuff, you'll know all about this. The thing is that frustrates me so much is they have no idea what they're talking about. So they've got this limiter and there's this thing in their hand. They're just going, it's above 90.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, but if you're stood right next to my face and the symbols, obviously it's going to be loud.
Yeah.
You're trying to measure it so that Bob in the village can't hear it.
Yes.
So we had one, and I'll tell this story for some context. I gig with a really amazing corporate band, and everything is mic'd up. We're all on in-ears, and it's a proper party band, right? So we get to the venue. In our contract, it says, is there any sound restrictions?
Yeah.
They replied and signed the contract, no. So we loaded in subs, all the speakers, drum mics, everything like that set up. I literally hit the snare once, and she came over and she went, excuse me, it's 90. I was like, what do you mean it's 90? We've got a sound limiter. I was like, oh, God.
Have you?
So you watched us load all that stuff in, and basically it got to the point where, and Tom, he's obviously amazing with sound.
Yeah, he's incredible.
We had to bring the volume down so low that at one point I stopped playing and no one noticed. And Tom, bless him, plays keys and sings. He was having an absolute mare to the point where in the break, the bride and groom came over and said, we can't hear what you're doing. And then we got to the end of the gig and the owner came over and Tom was like, was that okay? And he went, oh, you weren't even listening. So they basically kept on telling us to turn it down and then not measured it again. And we could have just turned it up and it would have been absolutely fine. So annoying.
So I think there's an important context here, is that as venues want to increase their revenue, the most obvious thing to do, this is for wedding venues or like function venues or whatever, they want live music. So they say, and they go and get the license, and they can say, right, we can have live music here, but they are beholden to the council of the borough or the county that they're in. So this is the problem. You've got venues who are saying you can have live music, but what they don't tell their guests is that actually it's been set at like 82 or something ridiculous like that. So yes, you can have live music at your venue for your wedding or your party or whatever, but it has to be so quiet that the band are going to hate it, your guests are going to hate it, but you're basically deceiving clients. That's the bit that really pisses me off, is like, just don't have live music. If you can't have it over 80, don't bother. Yeah. Right? And I get that people have, lived in areas for a long time, and then venues sprout up and the area changes. If you live in a small country sort of town, and then the big stately home down the road suddenly starts doing weddings and it gets loud, and you've lived there since 1805, and you're basically, this is my house and blah blah blah. I get that, but you're right. Where the tests should be done is by their houses. What nobody cares if it's 90 or 110 inside the venue. What we need to know is what's the bleed outside. Now, if you go outside and it's 110 outside the venue,
then you are loud.
You are really loud. But this is the thing, and I think what really doesn't sit well with me is the common sense. There's no common sense and there's no consistency. Yeah. That's what really pisses me off. It's like, because I used to, when I first moved to London, I was sort of assistant manager to a bar in London.
Assistant to the regional manager.
Assistant to the regional manager. Oh my God, yes. I was the Dwight Schrute of that pub. But we had apartments above the bar, right? So you had, ceiling and flooring and stuff, but it wasn't massively sort of thick. So there was a lot of bleed. So we'd have a sound system plugged into the venue, and eventually we got complaints because the residents were like, well, I don't want to hear it. I totally get that. Like, you're paying a lot of money for this apartment. This is not cheap. But we then had to have a sound limiter, which was totally cool. But the problem was they would complain. We'd take a reading inside the bar, which was too high. But I want to know what the reading was in their house. Do you know what I mean? Like, if it's really loud, then of course you turn down. But you just need to know, right? And this is where people who are in jobs who know absolutely nothing about the job that they are in.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say you work at the council and you're in charge of these sort of things. Unless you are like an audiologist or someone who really understands live music and the physics of sound,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but I don't really care what you think.
Yeah.
Because you're just being told to put a little thing up in the air and go, 75, you
I
can't do
know.
over 75. It's like, yeah, but where is it 75? Exactly, you're right by the drum kit. Go stand at the front door. Oh, it's 42. Oh, well, that's funny, isn't it? Like, but they don't go, well, look, there you go. And it's like, yeah, no, I know, because if I, put that next to this amp, it's going to be really loud. So it is really annoying that.
It's literally computer says no, isn't it?
Oh,
it's the
computer
equivalent
says
to.
no.
And the thing is, to give you some context as well, I think I might be slightly wrong. It's around 70 to 80 is a Hoover.
Yeah, exactly.
Is the decibel reading of a Hoover.
It's ridiculous.
And I think, and you're totally right, but I actually also feel really sorry for some of the venues because they've set themselves up for live music.
Yeah.
And obviously, if you're a wedding venue and you're like, we can't have live music here, you'll probably lose 3/4 of your business.
Yeah, even
live
more,
music
maybe.
for weddings
Exactly.
is like, you need it. So I do feel sorry for them, but I think at the same time, councils need to give them some form of training. And also,
Totally.
when you get to most wedding venues, it's like you go inside, oh, we've got a limiter. Okay, what's your venue made of? Stone and glass? Excellent. That's great for dampening the sound, isn't it? So fucking put
So
some like
true.
put some treatment around it, or
Yeah,
put some
some
sheets,
cladding or
or
something, yeah.
put some carpets on the floor or
Just
something
something,
to soak up
exactly.
the sound.
Yeah,
you
no.
know, it's not difficult. Like I've done some drapes and stuff in my studio to soak up some of the sound from the ceiling.
Yeah.
It's really, when we do Docks in Grimsby,
Oh, great venue.
beautiful venue.
Love it.
But when we first started playing there, it was like an echo chamber.
Yeah.
And now they've put those big curtains behind us.
Huge.
Sound is massive and
is.
ridiculously delicious.
It's a really good
know?
venue, that. And I think that's the thing. It's like with anything, I think people look at music and they go, it's only music. It's like, no, it's not. Like, you have to understand sound sometimes. Like, and you're right. You go into these massive barns and you hit the snare. It's like,
Yeah. Like, it's too loud. Oh no, shit, Charlotte.
oh yeah. Funny enough, because I'm in a fucking cave. No, but this is the thing. It's like you've got, and it does annoy me because venues, you can see they're taking the piss more and more.
Yeah.
You walk inside the limiters. Oh, it's 78, and you have to sign a contract. It's like, well, just don't do the gig.
Well, we've
You
started
walk
to
in
say
and-
no now.
Turn it off. Right,
Yeah.
exactly. Absolutely.
And this is the thing. Sorry to interrupt, mate.
No,
I was
no.
just, kind of carrying on from that.
15 years, I got used to it.
The thing is now, it's getting to the point where I'm not sure if I want to do those gigs
Yes.
anymore because
Yes.
it's so soul destroying. Like we're, with the light years, we're a big hip hop, R&B, disco, UK garage, that
Yeah.
sort of vibe. And when I'm using my hands and they're telling me it's too loud, there's a problem there. And it's like, I don't want to buy an electric drum kit.
No.
Because there are a lot of venues now will say you have to have, in contracts, it's like you have to have no amps, it's all got to be on in-ears, no drum kit, so it has to be an electric drum kit. I borrowed one off a mate for a gig a couple of months ago. I borrowed I think it's the TD50, the Roland. It's like $6,000.
Yeah.
And I still hated every second.
Yeah.
So like, if I'm playing on the best electric drum kit pretty much in the world and I still hate it, I just don't know if I want to do those gigs.
Yeah. Totally. So this means that upcoming players need to be aware of these restrictions because actually drummers in particular have it probably the hardest unless you're playing electric kit.
Yeah.
And we could speak a little bit about why electric kit is not the one and it doesn't feel the same and potentially doesn't sound the same. So this is really important because I think a lot of people don't appreciate how quiet you might have to play on a paid gig. I look back when we did the Quaglinos residency for years. I mean, I loved it. It was a really fun residency. We got to play all of the tunes we loved, but my God, were we quiet. It was so quiet. At some stage, I was like, is the bass even coming out? Like, I think I'm playing it. So this means that new upcoming musicians have to understand how to play quietly. And I don't know about you, but I've noticed that when most people play quietly, groove is the first thing to go, and also feel and just general energy. You don't have to play loud to play with like confidence, right? Like, what's your views on this?
Yeah, totally. I was actually, it's weird that you brought that up because I was actually going to say, I think a lot of my experience of playing quietly has probably come from those gigs.
Yeah.
Craglina's being one of them.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
I'd say like for drummers especially, where it's like such a, a sort of touch thing with your instrument, you're sort of physically either playing louder or quieter, especially within like an acoustic instrument as well. I'd say to all drummers, definitely practice playing quietly, but like keeping the consistency there, because usually if people sort of back off the volume a little bit, it's like slowing down or speeding up, or you lose the lovely rim shot or the sound. Like you can, and like I'm so sort of being very clear about this, like, and very passionate about it, I suppose. But like drummers, like you can still sound sexy as fuck.
Oh my god, yeah.
And like groove like a motherfucker playing quietly. Like you really can, just because it's like, actually I quite enjoy it sometimes.
Yeah,
but you
me
can
too.
you can literally have the same groove that you've been playing loudly, just knock off the volume.
Yeah.
It just takes a bit of practice, but it doesn't have to change your groove at all.
No. And I always think back to, I think it was Vic Firth, the solo series they did, and Steve Jordan did his solo spot. And I mean, it was gorgeous. But the thing that really blew my mind was halfway through, he just brought the dynamic down to barely audible and grooved so hard. We'll find that clip and put it in the show notes because it is something to behold.
No, the exact one.
You know which one I'm talking about, right? He's playing the Yamaha kit, I think, yeah. And I always thought, that is incredible. Like, and you can see in the way he's playing it, he's just grooving. He's doing that Steve Jordan, that groove face he has. But it's so quiet.
But you don't. This is the
But
thing
it's
with
so good.
You don't have to, as a drummer. Nothing like things in your head shouldn't be changing. So the motions that you're doing with your body are changing. So like, yes, okay, you're not putting as much movement into your strokes, or whatever like that. The time's still the same. Do you know what I mean? It just takes a little bit of practice. It's not like I'm getting quieter, so I'm slowing down. It's just like you're still playing.
Yeah,
you're just playing quieter. It's all it is. Just put less effort in, but you should still be thinking about the time. And I think what happens is, like, I suppose most musicians really, when they start sort of getting quieter, your instant reaction is to kind of start slowing down. But you just practice. I would say just practice grooving with a metronome. And do like 4 bars of your usual volume and then 4 bars. And I mean, like, beat 1, you have dropped the volume by 50%, and then do another 4 bars at like a medium volume or whatever. But keep it really, really consistent. Like, it shouldn't change the time at all.
It's funny, we've done this a couple of times where like dynamic shifts in a song, and like you ask people to do it, they come down by like 2%, and they're like, well, I'm doing it. I'm like, no, I mean 50%. I mean, the pocket is there, but 50% volume. Like, if you're a drummer and struggling with that, because a lot of people do, like, you've given some great examples there. What about like technical aspects of playing quietly? Where would we start with that?
Well, so I would say, and again, it's not, when I say like just put in less effort, there's more to it than that, because you will feel, especially if you're kind of maybe using your fingers in some of the grooves, sometimes you have to kind of put in a certain amount of effort to kind of get maybe that bounce or whatever, get the rebound. So you do have to kind of, it will change how the groove feels, and also some of the technique side as well. So I think if you start slowing down and things start falling apart, it just means you haven't got control over that groove 100%.
Control, cool.
So I think you should have control over a groove at multiple different volumes. And I think just whack a metronome on, and it might mean that rather than kind of using a lot of the bounce for some of the strokes, like maybe if you're playing like some doubles, or if you've got a few ghost notes, it might mean that you physically have to play them rather than sort of using the rebound as like a tool.
Because you haven't given enough energy to get the physical bounce back. That's really cool.
And also, maybe to start with, just simplify the groove a little bit. Just take some things away and work on that time, and then you can add stuff in. But I think the thing for me is I play a rim shot a lot.
Yeah.
And I think because I said it to, I think it was one of our students, I think it was Leo actually. Was it Leo? I can't remember. It might have been. And I said, just play it quieter. And he started playing it quieter, and the rim shot just disappeared.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, you can still
play a
have
rim
that
shot.
lovely backbeat with the rim shot, just quiet. And he was like, really? So yeah. Just don't put as much effort into that stroke, but you can still, literally, all you need to do is just connect with the edge of the drum and then the skin of the drum, and you'll still get, I mean, you can literally just go like that. You'll still get a rim shot. It just takes a bit of practice.
Right.
Rather than up here, you're sort of down here. You're just playing quieter.
So is it true to say, because I'm just watching you do that the height is directly related to the volume?
Yeah, kind of. But then I suppose a lot of it is like the whip. So if you're kind of whipping and preparing for that stroke, that helps as well.
Yeah.
Like if you're kind of playing like that, if I was then going to sort of play quieter, you're just a slight different, rather than sort of that whip.
Yeah.
But you can still get a little whip.
But there's like a little whip.
A little whip.
Little whip.
But yeah, it's just, I think it just takes practice. I'm actually, when I'm doing that now, I'm like, is that what I do? But yeah,
it's hard to, like, obviously, and
just less
movement, which makes sense because it's an acoustic instrument, so it is based on the energy you give it. You're not like turn it up a little bit. You can't unless it's an electric kit. It's similar to bass. So I think one of the things I noticed a lot in my playing when I first started to play quietly was groove just fell apart because you rely on that kind of response from the string. So you're like, oh yeah, digging in, and you feel it. And then when you play less, you're like, oh, but am I moving the string? But that's where amplification helps, because you can just whack it up and then play lightly and it still sounds really big. But one thing I'd recommend to bassists to do is to do exactly the same as this and control your dynamic with one volume on the amp and the bass. Don't start twisting the bass around and think, well, I can just play loud and just turn down. It's like, yeah, you can, but you've still got to stop playing to turn it down. So you should be able to play, I would say realistically, if you're at like a regular amp volume, you should be able to play down to about 30% up to 100. Anything below that, you do lose the groove. There's just not enough energy going to the bass to actually sound like something. But 30% at its most quiet is achievable. Yeah. And actually, it's really fun to play like that sometimes, because you start to really understand where the mechanics are of that instrument, because you're amplified, so everything's balanced. But it's like, oh, if I just, like you did the little whip there, you know, you go from this to that.
Yeah.
And it does take time, definitely. But the other thing as well I'd recommend is playing with your thumb, so you can mute up a bit, so you've got a little bit more control on the volume. Again, that will be dependent on your technique, though, because your thumb, for most of us, is nowhere near as fast as two alternate fingers, but you never know. So that's another thing to do. Of course, you can cheat and use volume pedals, but I'm a real big believer in actually getting the technique and control, and the word you said, control, absolutely, from your hands. Definitely. Because that's where your sound comes from anyway. So that would be my advice for players. What about electric kits? Because I've always been really curious about electric kits. Because my dad had one when he was curious about starting drums. This was, oh God, I don't know, way over 15 years ago, maybe 20 years ago. And he got an electric kit. I used to play it in the basement, and it was just awful. It feels like a toy.
Yeah.
What's your views on this?
The thing I don't like about electric kits is you can use these programs called, like, there's one called Superior Drummer, I think it is.
Right.
And basically, it's like sounds that have been recorded in like a professional recording studio.
Okay.
And you can run them off. I think you run them off your laptop. I used to run it off my laptop when I had my electric kit. Yeah. And so rather than using the inbuilt sounds from Roland, you can use sounds that are from somewhere else, basically. And some of the sounds are amazing, but I just don't like the feel of electric kits.
Right.
I find even on the most expensive ones, the toms and the snare are just a bit too bouncy because you're playing on sort of like mesh heads.
Yeah, totally.
And you can like make it less tension, but it's just not like, even the snare I was playing with was actually a USB one rather than plugged into the brain. It was plugged in, but it was like, I think that was like £1,000 just for the snare drum. Wow. It's like the top Roland thing. So it's like super sensitive. And I still didn't like it.
Yeah.
And even I actually used the built-in sounds on the Roland module, on like the Roland Brain.
Yeah.
I just think they sound awful. Like the cymbals
Oh yeah, I can imagine.
So tin. They just sound like MIDI,
Yeah,
and I hate it.
and because again, I'm not completely clued up on this. Is an electric drum kit essentially a MIDI controller?
Yeah, you're just triggering sounds.
Yeah, so you could set the sounds to something else and stuff. Okay, yeah.
So you can tweak this. The modules now are pretty advanced, but like the other thing I really can't stand is I find the hi-hats so temperamental. So with the hi-hat pedal, what they do have a rod. It's like a normal hi-hat. So you've got like a rubber cymbal there and a rubber cymbal on the top, and they do actually open and close. But I always find that something isn't quite right with the triggering system. Yeah. So you open it and it doesn't go. You just hit it and it's not triggering it properly, or you've got your foot all the way down and all of a sudden it just goes and like as if you've got an open eye. Like, fuck's sake! They're just for me. I also when I did that drummathon thing, where I played for like 12 hours straight.
We've got to talk about that in another episode because that was bonkers.
That was mental. Yeah, that was mental. But for charity, so it was good.
Yeah, it was great.
The guy Ali, who does it a lot, he's actually I think it's Ali. He's had loads of injuries through playing on electric kits.
Really? And where would that come from?
I think it's because you're hitting like rubber pads, so the skins give way a little bit. You're hitting rubber, and also on the rims are quite hard.
Right.
So like it's just on your wrists. It's just awful. Okay. So I know a couple of mates that have just played on electric kits at home, and they've had like RSI or problems with their wrists and stuff. So
oh my god. Okay.
Is there a bass equivalent like to an electric?
No, thank God.
Like
I mean, it's electric bass.
It's electric anyway.
You just turn it down, don't you?
You can get like electric uprights. Yeah. Ooh, buy me a Coke.
We don't like those. Well, I mean, I've played them. I find them the most offensive instrument I think I've ever played because for me, upright bass is an acoustic sound. Mm-hmm. To synthesize that and put it onto like a graphite neck that's like, first of all, you don't have the body. So physically it feels really weird. The only time I've really enjoyed one, I've never played this, but I listened to it and I thought that's amazing, is Sting used to play something, I think it's called a Z bass, and it was an electric upright. And he played a lot of his tracks on that, and it did sound really nice. Really, really nice. I think, tell me I'm wrong if I've done this, but I'm pretty sure the Z bass is on Englishman in New York and a few other things. And it does sound like an upright, and it's really nice. But you have to spend a lot of money to get a decent one. You do not go budget on an electric upright. But some people have got these like travel basses, which are kind of half there and half not. Those sound okay. I just think, just play the real thing. Do you know what I mean? Like, why would you try and fake a sound that is there already? I get from a visual aspect and a sound aspect, but upright, if you don't amplify it, it's not that loud anyway. You need to amplify it just to hear the thing, unless you're bowing, which will then be super loud.
I suppose it's obviously like uprights are massive, aren't they? So I suppose if you haven't got the
super
space to transport,
if you can get a small one, absolutely. I'm not saying that just get an upright, but for me personally, it's just that the sound is just nowhere near. Maybe I haven't played enough to know, but part of me is like, I don't really care. I don't want it. It's not something that excites me at all. It's like those bikes, the super bikes you get with the 50cc engines. Yeah. So you get this like bike and you're like, whoa, and there's like it sounds like a hairdryer. And you're like, just get a moped, mate, like everyone else. Don't get this like Ducati looking thing and then you turn on it's like ring, ring, ring. It's just like, no, it doesn't seem right for me. But anyway, on bass you don't have to worry about that too much because you just turn down. But one thing I have noticed is that people feeling what it's like to play at different volumes, that's the thing they should be working on, because you do need to feel what it's like to play harder and softer.
Yeah.
Because it is a totally different tactile experience within the instrument. Obviously, particularly with the plucking hands. Now, plectrum is harder to control because obviously it's a physical piece of plastic that you're moving back and forth. But again, muting, sort of, using the flesh of your hand to mute up, that's a nice way of cutting the volume down without using pedals. But most people these days will just use a volume pedal, which I get, but it shouldn't be the only thing we can do. So I've got a question.
Yeah.
Electric kit, blah, off the list, right? So what would you do for a nice setup for a quiet venue? Talk to me about what you bring.
Yeah, so
Because you've got a couple of tricks, right?
ish.
The old sizzler.
You know,
I love the old sizzler. It's one of my favourite things.
well, I mean, again, I'm not like electric kits are not for me, but I've got my own studio now. I'm very lucky to do that, so I can set up a kit. I had an electric kit when I was living in London. I'm not like bad mouthing electric kits. They serve a purpose. Like I totally get that. I just absolutely hate playing them. Yeah. It's just my personal preference. But what you could do,
kiss goodbye to that Roland sponsorship.
Yeah, I know. Well, but like I use all the electronics with an acoustic kit. Like I use all the SPDSX stuff. I just like a full electric drum kit. I'm just like,
it's not the one.
Thanks, Roland, but no. Yeah. So what I tend to do now is I just don't do the gig.
Right.
No, I'm joking.
I was like, okay.
So you need to be quiet. No, I just don't want to do it. I'm
just not gonna do it anymore.
What you can do, there's some cool things out there now. I mean, first of all, I've just got a smaller kit now for functions. Right. So I have a smaller bass drum.
Right.
I've got like a little 18 by 14, which works really well.
Which way round does that go? So 18 wide, the circle is 18 and the 14 is the depth?
Yes.
Yeah, so which makes sense.
18 and then the
14.
Depth. Yeah, so like standard sizes, so the one I'm touring with at the moment, like a standard bass drum size is 22 by 18.
Big.
So it's like it's quite a big bass drum.
Regular bass drum.
I've got a 20 by 14 and an 18 by 14.
So
18 by 14 is a pretty jazz standard size.
You're not going to get like a real beefy kick out of that. You're going to unless you mic it. Obviously.
Unless you mic it and put some dampening in it. A lot of jazzers don't put anything in there, so it's quite like a sort of I don't know, like a. You get a lot of tone from the drums. There's not a lot of dampening. You get more almost like a sort of a tonal sound rather than like a
okay. Nice. Okay, cool.
So smaller size drums. There's some really Rubrics drum shop that drummers, if you haven't checked them out there, they're amazing. They do these things now which they essentially look like tea towels.
Right.
But they're the actual size of drums, and they're like a sort of fabric, and you just whack them on the top, and it completely deadens the drum.
Wow.
But it still feels quite nice to play. So you could get, 14 for the snare, and then like a 12 and a 14 for the toms if you wanted to. You can always, which I absolutely despise, but you can gaffer tape, like put some strips on the bottom of your cymbals. But these are options. You know what I mean? You're just trying to deaden that sound, and it's like if you've got no other options. I seem to find in those venues with sound limiters, the snare is always the big one.
That's the one that causes the problems, is it? Because of the fact that it's quite loud.
Yeah,
right.
Definitely. So yeah, I'd say smaller drums and things that are going to dampen your sound. Okay. Nice. And also I would say for bands, if you're thinking about getting into the functional corporate world, definitely have in-ears. I would really, if you're going to think about buying a PA, don't go and spend loads of money on a PA and monitors and all that sort of stuff, because it just adds to all the sound in the room, all the sound on the stage. If you have in-ears, you can control the only sound that's coming out is what you're putting out front of house, and obviously the drums as well. But guitarists and bassists don't even have to have amps anymore. You can just go.
Lots of people don't.
So that's one way. Or there's the electric kit option, which I honestly think, mate, that give it 10 years, and I think everyone will be using sort of electronic kits or whatever. I think it's only going to get worse with venues.
Yeah, I think you're probably right there.
I really do, because if you think about when we were gigging, when we were like 20, like new to the function world,
it was still bad.
I don't seem to remember that much. Sound limiters. I know if you did.
No, you're right. I do remember a few, but that might have been later years. I can't really remember those years so clearly. But you're right. Especially in the cities, like especially in London, so many venues have just been like
100 Wardour's a big one.
Yeah, 100 Wardour.
They're all on. It's all electric kits. There's no amps.
Yeah, I get it, because it does serve a purpose, and you can have music, and look, people are getting jobs. That's really good, and that's wonderful. We should support anything that puts people in employment. But we do have to start asking ourselves the question: is it music anymore? Are we playing how we really want to play? Is this really justifying? But sometimes they don't want that. They just want a bit of noise whilst people are eating, and I get that. And I'll take 400 quid off them to do that.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, you just have to think about what gig it is.
I'm just like, get a DJ and I'll stay at home.
That's the
have
thing.
the night off.
Yeah, it is. We sound like we're sort of old cranky men here, but we are. But we're just sort of like, I think it's really important that young musicians go in with their eyes wide open.
100%.
You are not going to be playing super loud at most venues you play. In fact, the only time you're going to play loud is either at a pub where they don't give a shit and it's way too loud.
Yeah.
It's just horrible. Or a venue, a proper venue that has sound and it's been treated and all of those stuff. When you're doing functions and things like that, you need to be ready to potentially play very, very quietly. Yeah. So if you're thinking, oh yeah, I'll bring my 410 cab. Nah, mate, don't do that. But have a nice little rig that works really well. Yep. Again, you might just use amp modeling. You may not even bring your amp if it's in-ears. Obviously, that's the only way that's going to work. But think about this stuff. And if you're not practicing playing quiet, start practicing playing quietly. I think the other thing I was going to ask you about, because I always loved it when you used to do it, it's just going kick, snare, hats.
Yeah.
Real simple little setups. Is that so? Like, if someone wanted to start getting into those very small setups, what would you sort of suggest? Because you still get the vibe, but you're not as tempted, I suppose, to create more noise. Obviously, I mean, am I talking out my bum there?
No, not at all. I'd say as well, guitarists especially, I'd have some options. So like, have an amp, have some pedals, but then maybe get yourself like a Helix or a Kemper or something like that. Like Dave, when we do fly dates on the tour, he just uses this. It's not a Helix. I can't remember what it is, but it's sort of the equivalent of that sort of thing. Yeah, it's got all his sounds. He just flies that. Yeah. No amp, nothing. But then if he has, but then on the UK dates, because he wants the amps for a bit more sort of on-stage sound, he uses amps. And I would say for guitarists, like, if you can have an amp, but then maybe the option to have that as well. Also, if you haven't got an amp, it's less gear to take to gigs.
Absolutely. Like,
and that's the
work
reason
smart, not hard.
100%.
Absolutely.
With the small kit stuff, I actually really love those setups.
Me too.
And we do it with a lot of the drummers here at ICMP. Like, it's just, you haven't got as many options, but actually it makes you get more creative, because it's like, if you want to do a fill, you've got these voices, not these voices. Do you know what I mean? So I'd say with some of the drummers, like, play kick, snare, hats and see what you can do. And there's, look at Nate Smith. Like,
I was going to say Nate Smith and Fearless Flyers. Come on.
Mate, he literally has kick, snare, hats, no cymbals, and he still makes it work. So I think when people go, well, I need toms, it's like, okay, maybe for a few songs, but just make it work. Like, I think for functions now, the majority of stuff, unless I'm doing stuff where I do maybe a bit more sort of chopsy and I want a few more options, I can easily do a gig with kick, snare, hats and a ride. I
was going to say, so the ride is an important addition, because then you can crash as well as
just use one cymbal,
do the ride,
crash and a ride.
And now let's plug the sizzler. My favourite sound in the world. What is the sizzler, John?
I mean, that's not really for noise things, but like, it's
it's great when it's low volume though. It does add an extra texture, right? And I love. Yeah, I know. I'm a drummer inside. I know this shit. Come on. What is a sizzler?
So it's like, there's a couple of options. You can either have like this sort of chain that hangs off the bell of the ride, and it kind of rattles when you hit it, and it creates this like delicious sort of sound after you've hit the cymbal. You can also get rivets that are actually drilled into your cymbal, and they like hang through the hole, and when you hit it, it kind of like rattles in the cymbal. It's really cool. That's a nice texture to use for more sort of like the lower volume, maybe sort of jazzy kind of soul stuff. Okay, I never knew about that. All the companies do them. Or just get a bath chain. Honestly,
I suppose a plug, right? It basically looks like a plug.
Tie it around the top.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So you can fake it if you don't want to spend the money on a sizzler. So there's definitely some things there for people to consider about, particularly drummers. And I think drummers do get a rough time of this, because unless you are on electric kit, you're going to be the problem. Aren't you?
I think, like, to sort of wrap it up. I think if you're a musician nowadays, or if you're looking to get into any sort of gig scene, whether it be functions, corporates, playing in clubs, playing in big arenas, whatever you're trying to do, it's important that you are versatile.
Yes.
In, your playing styles, in your approach, and also your volume. And I think just going like, I don't want to play quiet. It's like, okay, if you don't want to be able to play quietly, you're going to limit yourself quite a lot. And I think just take the time, and you can still you might discover something about yourself. Like when we were doing that, it was like a baptism of fire, because it's like, whoa, I've just got to make this work.
Yeah.
And I would say in this day and age now, if you're going into those gigs, first of all, just have the control over your instrument and have the options to do that yourself, like physically, but also then from a sound point of view, it might be worth hiring a sound engineer for your gigs.
Yeah.
It might be worth, if you want to do it yourself, or getting in-ears. Mm-hmm. It might be worth considering the equipment you use on those gigs, because it is getting more difficult.
Yeah, it's only going to get worse, as you said, definitely. And I think my final bit to add is around just the touch of your instrument. So, we spend a lot of time buying pedals, buying electronics and buying stuff, but actually if you go back to the basics and you really start to listen to your sound in like the most flat EQ, so it's just the sound of the instrument, and start doing the work on that, you will actually find some amazing discoveries there. Maybe not straight away, but if you persevere with it, you will find some stuff. So yeah, hopefully that was useful for everyone. It's an interesting subject. It's definitely, I'd be really curious in the comments from people what limiter issues you've had. Share it. Is this just an English thing as well? Like, is this UK based? Like, please tell us, in your country, are you worrying about limiters as well? Is it just the moody Brits shutting down all the fun, as Jon said?
Yeah, I think like me and Ben have said this before, but if you're listening and you want to sort of comment on stuff like this, please do, because then we can talk about this on the next episode. And I would love to, this is mine and sort of Ben's experience of this stuff, but there's so many gigging musicians out there.
Totally.
Love to know your thoughts. I've seen some things online before and whatever about other people's experience on Facebook, but get involved. We'd love to talk about this stuff.
Cool. Well, see you next time. Don't play too loud. Bye.
Cheers. Bye.